Hello and welcome to our video on how to implement the MAM SDK Compliance for a Citrix endpoint management service. The agenda of today's call is to help you understand the overall architecture and data flow and help you understand the MAM SDK core. It's not covered as part of this video, but it's important you understand the basics and some things to look at. We'll then cover the MAM SDK Compliance Framework module, and then we'll cover how to set up policy inside the endpoint management console and basically how to debug it. So it's important that you understand the basic data flow inside the service. So with the endpoint management service, you typically have cloud connectors installed in your network and a NetScaler or a Citrix gateway. The service has been renamed. And the idea is that the cloud connectors are there so that the cloud service can talk to Active Directory, or if you have certificate integration embedded into your service, then it's there. And also if you have virtual apps and desktops configured, the enumeration of those apps inside of Secure Hub would come through the cloud connector as well. So when you talk about device management side of the house and policy management, for example, those basic configurations go from the device to the endpoint management service and talk, and then if you need to authenticate, they go through the cloud connector. But the difference is that your client data, so the data that would typically be traversing from your application, right, going into internal web services, web pages, etc., inside your network, that will pass through the gateway. So that traffic doesn't traverse through the cloud and go through the cloud connectors. They go direct from the device to the gateway. So now let's switch over to the documentation, and notice you have options here for iOS and iPad as well as Android and other frameworks, but we're going to go into iOS, and there's a section here on getting started that covers various components of the MAM SDK. We're going to focus on compliance here, and there's some information here showing you about adding the framework and some basic Objective-C and Swift examples, and it goes fairly deeply into it, but obviously not complete. And then there's a section here on compliance down below, and it drills a bit deeper into it and talks about what you can do and what you can't do, helps you understand the delegates, how to import them into your application, and what are those functions and methods that you need to leverage to make your app work properly with the SDK, and some further information around the compliance.h that you'd need for Swift. So at this point, we're going to switch to our Xcode, and we have an active device over on the right, and we're just checking to make sure that, hey, this application functions properly before we put the SDK into it. So now what we're going to do is import our compliance module into our application, and then we're going to drive our delegate class into our application so that we can handle the events when they occur. And if we just click down the next line, it's going to give us a warning, hey, you have some stub functions that are missing here. So we're just going to put these in and click fix, and it's just going to put some stubs for our callbacks in here. And we're just going to add some logging here, and really it's up to you to decide how you want to handle this. There's a number of situations, like we'll show here in a moment, where if you do an app lock, for example, right, then when your app hits that, it should warn the user and exit. We're not going to implement that code here. It's just an example to show you. And now what we're going to do is actually add the delegate initialization here. So we're going to clean our application. And then you notice here we have our MDX file that was created. And if you have trouble finding this file, there's a setting in the core setup that'll help it, where it's built into your application build directory that's relative to your app. But in this case, I already have the MDX file loaded for iOS. So what I'm going to show you is here, there'd be a similar upload button as well if you didn't have it loaded. So I'm just going to drill into it. And if we go into our application and build, and then release iPhone OS, you see our MDX file there. We'll upload it. So if you were to make a change in your policy files, you could just import them into an existing one, and it'll merge them and remove things or add depending as needed. So there's a lot of settings here. But one of the main ones we want to look at here is the ability to set non-compliance behavior. So it's good when you're doing the developing to set allow app after warning. So if you were to mess up in some of your configuration, it would just give you a warning and continue on. A delivery group assigns this application and policy configuration to all users in the case of what we did here, but if you're in production environment, you could limit that to just a small subset of users so it didn't go out to your whole user community. So now at this point, we have our app ready. We've compiled it, and now we're running it on the device. And you see the app comes up, and it gets there, and everything looks good, right? So we're in compliance, and nothing has gone wrong. So now what we want to do is switch back to our console. And we're going to go into our device and click the secure button and just say, let's do an app lock, which means don't let MAM applications run. That's part of the compliance framework. So let's go ahead and set that value. And now we're going to go back to Xcode and run our app again. So if we go into Secure Hub on the device and look at it from the store, for example, if you drill in, you'll see that, hey, the apps are locked, right? So from a Secure Hub perspective, it's blocked. So now if we go back to Xcode and we set a breakpoint for the handle the admin lock method here, and we run our application and look at it from inside of our app instead of Secure Hub, what we will see here is that when we run our application, it's going to launch, and then we hit our breakpoint here. So at this point, you should essentially have your app exit and let the end user know, hey, you need to sign back in via Secure Hub. So we've got our breakpoint. We see our logging that we said, hey, we want to log this so we know that the compliance issue happened. And then if you dig in here, you see the error message is giving us the same information that we saw there inside of our log.